Mr Chair, I would first like to sort of take some time, because it's a little bit odd for me to be speaking and I feel a little bit like I'm out of sorts, but I'd first like to just ask the member around supporting the amendment that New Zealand First has put forward. And I'd like to take a bit of time to kind of explain why New Zealand First's position is where it is on this piece of legislation. Firstly, just if you'd indulge me, Mr Chair, the background on this space is that I have done a lot of work in the labour exploitation area and recognise the vulnerability of these communities, and therefore have had to rely a lot on the immigration legislation that looks at the protections for temporary workers and unlawful workers in this country, and that there is a real disconnect around the balance between those who are vulnerable workers for different reasons and that they have a position where they are losing wages. At the same time, New Zealand First is a strong advocate for our New Zealand businesses, for our hard-working Kiwi battlers, our farmers, our entrepreneurs, our small business owners, that are incredibly diligent employers. They rely on their workforce significantly and treat their workforce incredibly well because they know the investment that they have made is the backbone of their business. So we are talking about a very small sector. Our concern New Zealand First had in this was that, and it's been touched on in the discussion so far, that we needed to ensure that there was not only intentional actions, not only the mens rea to deprive, but that there was no reasonable excuse.
Now, just glad to mention that Cassie Costello mentioned the word mens rea, which means intent to commit the crime. Something that Grant McCullen might have not heard that while he's milking cows and shearing sheep and dealing with beef in Northland.
But that's not what they tell him on the radio up in Northland. You know, Whangarei Tim doesn't tell him that about mens rea.
No. For all we know, next we might be on Whangarei Tim's content.
And that will capture, I think, a lot of the concerns that's been raised in the House today, is that if there's a payroll glitch, if there is a delayed timesheet, if there is a dispute over a timesheet, if there is a cash flow issue, all of those factors that would generate a reasonable excuse would ensure that this component of legislation is really focused on those who we are targeting, not the hard-working Kiwi battlers that we know contribute so much to the backbone of our economy, but to those who maliciously and intentionally seek to use their power control of vulnerable workers and not pay them. And I know we've talked a lot in this House, and if you'll indulge me to explain further why this is an issue, we've talked a lot about the personal grievance model and the opportunities. The challenge with the personal grievance model is, yes, we can go through the employment process, but when we're dealing with employers who are intentionally intending to deprive workers, the grievance process is seldom used, and if it is used, there is no recourse or exposure to the employer regarding their reputation, and brand reputation is a significant issue. That when there is a company that is held accountable for something as serious as a crime, then there will be a change in mindset. There won't be an invisibility about this process. So I think it's important to get some context, and the reason New Zealand First is speaking on this legislation is because we recognise that just as we have hard-working Kiwi businesses, we have hard-working employees who, on occasion, can be victimised because of that power imbalance. And I think it's important to recognise that when we talk about without reasonable excuse, when we're talking about the protections that we've expressed in concerns in this House about the onerous conditions, there are no onerous conditions. Most of our employers are doing exactly what they do, and there's no additional conditions coming from this legislation. They pay their staff, they make sure their duty of care to their employees is met. But we are talking about the employers who will profit off the backbone of hard-working New Zealanders who are here to make a buck, and I think this is where we want to see the balance. So my question really is asking the member to accept this amendment, to recognise that intention and without reasonable excuse provides the balance that we think is important in this piece of legislation. Thank you, Member.
Mr Chair.
Camilla Belich.
Thank you very much, Mr Chair, and thank you to the member for that very thoughtful contribution to this debate, which I think does really sum up the purpose of this legislation. It's not meant to punish people who have done no wrong. It's not meant to be an extra bureaucratic cost. It is simply punishment for those who intend to commit theft. And so I'm grateful to the member for providing this very good amendment paper to the House, and I do support this amendment paper. I think that it, in both of its major changes, really adds a clarity to the bill and clarifies that it's not a bill that covers mistakes in payroll, it's not a bill that covers errors, it's not when people forget, it's intentionally without reasonable excuse. It really makes that wording stronger, and so I do thank the member for that suggested wording, and I do support this amendment bill. I also support the aspect of the amendment bill that makes this, I think, a better piece of legislation, is making sure that the way that theft is treated in relation to this new small part of the Crimes Act is consistent with the rest of the Crimes Act as well. So I think it's a beneficial amendment, and I think that I encourage all members across the House, even if you're not voting for the substantive bill, I do would like to request that you consider this amendment paper, because I do think it is beneficial and makes the bill a better piece of, hopefully, legislation. In relation to the member's other comments, I agree with that. This is about balance. It is about making sure that there are serious consequences for serious wrongdoing, and I know that I speak for the whole House where we do, of course, support the work that employers do. We know it's not always straightforward to be an employer, but there has to be a line, and the line in this case is when you intentionally without reasonable excuse, take money from your employee, there must be consequences for that. It helps good employers, it helps employees, it makes people answerable for what is a crime, and creates balance within the Crimes Act to make sure that crimes that employees commit and crimes that employers commit are treated the same under the law. So I thank the member for that contribution and encourage the House to support the amendments that she's proposed.
That was very woke. I didn't think NZ First would go woke there, because they're woke because they agree with me. See, it's not so bad being woke, guys. That's pretty woke.
Should we just say there are some people inside New Zealand First who have been trying to make sure that bill comes into law.
Yeah, that's pretty woke. I like that's a that was a woke statement from Casey Costello.
Yes, on the front face of it, but it's actually stuff that's behind the scenes. As I know, someone who's within the party has helped try to persuade it to cross the line.
Yeah, I mean, NZ First is putting the W in woke. So cool.
Thanks for watching. Make sure you're subscribed to our Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, Instagram, TikTok, News Guide, The Order, Paper Pie.